I notice I'm recording a little bit later because I was initially busy this morning, but here I am. Man, I'm excited to cover the last episode of the last season of My Hero Academia, literally titled My Hero Academia. It's coming full circle, and I've had a great experience watching My Hero Academia from start to finish. And I want to get started with this. By the end of last week's episodes, we get introduced to this new boy who seems to be developing a dangerous quirk, but he doesn't necessarily have control over it. Yet his caretakers have abused him and locked him up because they couldn't understand him. They just saw him as a threat, and it just felt very narrow minded. And with a circumstance like that, this new kid could have become a villain, which is why the next scene really stood out to me. This lady was there when Shigaraki, aka Shimura Tenko, was developing his quirk and destroyed his family and was basically abandoned, and he was trying to find some help, but this lady back then she rejected him. Years later, now that the war is over, she encounters a new kid, but instead of becoming a villain, this new kid's life would change for the positive because this lady learned from her actions and decided to give him a helping hand. I'm here. Yes, I'm here is a message that is prevalent throughout My Hero Academia, starting with how All Might was there for everyone, to how Midoriya was there for everyone, and I'm going to get into more detail about this. Even more importantly, I loved how Midoriya was there for Uraraka, and them in the class were able to graduate and to be able to get closer to reshaping the world into a better place and coming closer to their dreams. One of them in particular is how Uraraka would become an elementary school teacher. I really liked how she's working with Froppy and Momo years later, and it really stands out to me because she freshly remembers the tragedy of not being able to save individuals like Himiko. In order to prevent those things from happening again, she's teaching children at a young age, and I think this really works. Man, when I look at this picture, I My Hero Academia has come a long way, and I had my fair share of laughs, my fair share of cries, and there were many awesome fights. But more importantly, there were a lot of lessons that I learned from My Hero Academia about moving forward one step at a time. And through those one steps, Midoriya has been able to become an influence to his class. He's become an influence to Bakugo. He's become an influence to the world. Not in the same way All Might was, but in his very own way, even when he lost his quirk. I also thought this scene was pretty nice, seeing a future where our Class A characters are all grown up, and especially characters like Kota, who is one of the most important people that Midoriya saved at the beginning of the series, and uh, I think it was a nice little Easter egg how an older Kota is voiced by the same voice actor who voices Rudo in Gachiakta, so I thought that was pretty cool. And it just comes to show that the legacy of Class A lives on, even if the new generation doesn't mirror the last one. It just comes to show how influential Midoriya and his class were. As we're moving to the future, we're having less incidents with villains. But this new kid, Dai, he wants to become a hero, yet some of his classmates were discrediting him. And it just comes to show, yeah, there are people out there that when peace becomes prevalent, we tend to develop a mindset where challenges shouldn't occur, you're thinking too much, you're overthinking, and I kind of felt for Dai, honestly. He wants to become a hero, even though it's not really popular, and even though it's not reasonable to his classmates. But he still went for it, and I thought that was really nice. One thing that really stood out to me was when he saw this one kid trip and he tried to save him, but it turns out that Midoriya was there too. And this was at a time where Midoriya went back to the school grounds of UA High, think back and reflect on his school days, which is really nice because all of his classmates, Midoriya's classmates, were moving on to the future. But Midoriya wants to be a hero in his own way, and I loved how when Dai met Midoriya, he was enamored, just like how Midoriya was enamored for All Might. It just comes to show that even though the generation may be different than the last, there are still some things that will repeat themselves. And I imagine Midoriya is going to be a great influence to this new kid going forward. And it just comes to show that anyone can be a hero, even if they don't believe it from the get go. This was probably very beautiful. Some people have criticized that My Hero Academia's final battle had very few casualties, especially in Class 1A's side. And All Might is alive. But I thought this scene was really beautiful because lately we noticed that by the end of the final battle, Midoriya had become corkless again, and we were uncertain what Midoriya was going to do in the future now that his classmates were going to more hero or society related occupations. But as he reunites with All Might, he gives him a mechanical suitcase, which basically is kind of like a mix of Iron Man and One for All, even though he doesn't have the inheritance of One for All. Seeing him get this new piece of armor showed that he never was alone. And I found it, I don't know, I just really teared up when I saw this scene. It just comes to show that Midoriya always wanted to become a hero. Yes, anyone can be a hero. That's what he told the new kid Dai back in the school grounds. And it's really poetic how he was able to see All Might again the next day or sometime later, and to be able to get that, it just comes to really show that dreams can come true, and Midoriya followed his heart, even though there are trials along the way. Just like the new kid Dai, Midoriya also was discredited by Bakugo and many other people because of how he was quirkless. But if you remember, All Might also technically was quirkless, but he still was able to use One for All. But this time, even though he doesn't have One for All, Midoriya can still be a hero. And it just comes to show that he can still be with his classmates, even though they're all grown up. It just comes to show that they will meet again. And I can see why this finale is titled My Hero Academia. Even after Class 1A has finally graduated, the fact that they come together to learn together, experience new things together, comes to show that anyone can become a hero, anyone can learn. And because learning takes a lifetime, even though they have separate lives, they have a Hero Academia, just like how the finale turned out. I'm going to give the pros for the season. I really enjoyed the fight scenes and how consistent the production has been for Studio Bones. Studio Bones has been one of my favorite studios for anime recently, and there were some really top-notch animators like Vincent Chansard on some of the episodes, like with Bakugo versus All for One, and that was a beautiful scene. That was a beautiful fight scene, and honestly, one of My Hero Academia's selling points is the emotion. Every episode of this final season was packed to the brim with emotion. I was rooting for Midoriya and all of his classmates every episode, and it just comes to show that there most of these characters aren't just stereotypes. They can have real impact, just like how they have been with each of their occupations. And I really like the choice of opening and ending that they have come with this last season. If I were to note any cons, honestly, there isn't any. I have been really positive about this season. So my final score for the episode, no, for the season as a whole, I'd give the story a solid A plus. The animation is a solid A as well. Very few animation shortcuts, and I honestly don't have many complaints for the season. Art definitely an A. There were some very nice drawings lately throughout every episode. It just comes to show how alive this series has been. I'm gonna miss My Hero Academia. And for music, I'd definitely give it an A. Both the soundtrack and the opening and ending have been very memorable. Honestly, I'm going to miss this series. Let me know your favorite moments in the comments below, and if you enjoy my videos, please don't forget to like and subscribe so you can continue to see my insights.